Funneling is one of the most important things in Clash of Clans, but most people don't exactly know why their troops aren't going in the right direction. So let's give a fully accurate and detailed breakdown to funneling. First things first, let's start with the basics to funneling. There are a lot of different concepts, but let's start with visualizing it. What you'll specifically want is usually something to tank and then also deal damage. A tank can be something like a golem, and the damage dealer can be something like a wizard. You're using the golem or the tank up front and just letting them soak the damage. You'll then use your damage dealer, the wizards, in order to clear buildings on the left and right of the entry point, which allows you to send troops, CC, or even your heroes into the base, and you'll know where they're going. That is why funneling is incredibly important. Now, the positioning of it really kind of depends, because if you angle it in the right way, the troop or hero that you are using to funnel is going to go in that same direction. So just keep in mind on how you are placing your troops and your heroes, because that will allow you to dictate where they go and how far they go in terms of your funnel. Now we have 15 methods that you can use to funnel. So let's start simple. Sneaky Goblins. You unlock these at Town 11, and you can literally fit them in any army composition. They're really good at clearing out resource buildings, so try to look for those things. But specifically, you'll need 1 for collectors, mines, and drills, while you need 2 for storages. Now, balloons are another way to funnel. You can use them against Teslas, mortars, cannons, and archer towers. However, you will need 1 balloon and 1 minion on the Tesla and mortars, and 2 balloons on the cannon and archer towers. I would consider them to be a very solid pick. They're relatively cheap, and you could easily use them without having to spend using a baby dragon or whatever to clear those defensive buildings on the outside. Wizards, like I mentioned earlier, are great for funneling. However, just make sure that you are using a tank in front of them so they can do a lot of work. They're relatively cheap as long as you have a tank in front. Similar to Sneaky Goblins, baby dragons are really versatile and can be fit in most armies, especially since it has the ability of Rage, which really does wonders for funneling. It's a great unit to funnel. However, keep in mind that Seeking Air Mines can reduce it to atoms. So use a balloon to look for any Seeking Air Mines before you use it. However, using an Electro Dragon for funneling is pretty much super expensive. In terms of this, the E-Drag has Chain Lightning, which hits 5 different buildings. So you want to take advantage of this by making sure that you're looking at buildings that are either touching or have a 1-tile gap. Keep in mind as well that they do take a ton of damage from Seeking Air Mines. So use a balloon in front of them to look for them, because they are really expensive. You don't want them to just lose half health instantly. So you also want to make sure that you possibly even use a rage spell. It's a very good possibility. However, it's very situational, and typically it's only to remove an air defense if you're using it close to that. The Yeti is an incredibly great funneling troop that does 2 things at once. It not only removes defenses, thanks to the Yeti mites, but it also can remove the outside structures and also tank for something like a wizard. That is the beauty of the Yeti. Keep in mind though that the Yeti can steal healers, so don't use it near healers or in any sort of Warden walk or queen charge attack. Outside of that, it's incredibly good at being used on another side to create the funnel, and just makes it so much easier in removing different buildings. It's very versatile despite its 18 housing space, and can work incredibly well in most army compositions. If you want to use something that pretty much is cheaper than an E-Drag and does roughly the same thing, Valkyries are a better play. They only cost 8 housing space, they have a decent amount of HP, and this just allows you to use them to funnel a little bit more often, especially if buildings are very close together or even touching. Witches are another troop that are pretty solid for funneling. They're typically only paired with the Barbarian King, or really any sort of tank that's in front, such as a P.E.K.K.A or Yeti, but they are really, really good in terms of just being able to spawn skeletons and add more chip damage to their own chip damage. But keep in mind that they are relatively weak, and giant bombs and even mortars can crush them. So make sure that they don't get locked on to defenses. The bowler has one of the most complex ways of funneling. This method is known as the bowler bounce. It's very old, but still is somewhat viable, but not like what it used to be. In terms of this, you're always looking at something with high HP, such as a gold storage, and then something with lower HP than it, such as an air defense. This is super situational, and you're not going to see this in every base, but if you see that you might be able to do that, you can slot it in since it only costs like 6 housing space. Now, in terms of siege machines, the battle blimp can be chosen in the use of a Yeti bomb. This is using Yetis within the blimp with a rage spell. This can be anything from the town hall, Eagle Artillery, Infernos, Scatters, you name it. Its main goal is just to funnel. Just make sure that you look at where the town hall is and you could easily get a ton of value from it. However, we also have siege machines that are literally funneling built in their kit. This means the Siege Barrack. It's pretty much the funneling siege machine. It doesn't move, but it's great in terms of funneling for stuff like hybrid or smash attacks. You'll also want to consider bringing Hog Riders into it, Valkyries, or Yetis, but also it provides a P.E.K.K.A. and Wizards, just really allowing you to create the funnel. The Flame Flinger is another incredibly useful siege machine in terms of funneling. You will need to pair it with the Barbarian King and either Witches or Wizards in order to clear non-defensive structures. Since it can stay on the outside, it can remove interior buildings without any issues. Make sure that what you're also doing with this as well is you're bringing in Hog Riders. This is just going to allow you to get a lot of value from it once it pops. Keep in mind as well that you can also use this in a lot of armies, specifically ones that either use a Queen Charge or a Warden Walk. Now, the Barbarian King is something we want to mention early. It's great for funneling, and you're pretty much going to be using him for only funneling unless you're using a hero dive with your Archer Queen as well. Outside of that, you are specifically using him on the outside, and you can pair him with a lot of things. Wizards, Witches, you can even pair him with siege machines like the Siege Barrack and the Flame Flinger. Just make sure you do not place him near the Archer Queen or Grand Warden, because pretty much either the healers will switch onto the king and that's not good, or the Warden will follow your king. So instead, just use him away from them and you should be a-okay. And speaking of those, the Warden Walk is one way that you can actually use heroes to funnel. The Warden Walk is fantastic. With the use of healers, it has a large range. You'll need to speed them up with all the other methods that are fairly cheap, such as Sneaky Goblins or Baby Dragons, or even Wizards, to really help clear a little bit of a funnel and make him go in the right direction. But don't worry about funneling him to go in the right way, because all you need is something like the Archer Queen to lure him over and you're good. You can even bring lightning spells to remove interior buildings to speed up the Warden Walk. This is really good and only used in smash attacks or mass Valkyrie attacks. And of course, we can't leave this without the Queen Charge, the best way to funnel really any sort of attack, and it's paired up very nicely with a lot of different strategies. So the Queen Charge is very, very good and is very versatile. Keep in mind though that you do need to actively funnel your queen. So Baby Dragons and Sneaky Goblins and Balloons are great to funnel her. Any sort of ground units are usually not advised, and especially the Barbarian King. So keep them away from her, just use Sneaky Goblins and Baby Dragons to funnel her so she can get a lot of good value from the interior side of the base and also create a funnel for your main push. Now, if you want to see funneling being done in action and a little bit explained for a real attack, consider checking out my Super Bowler video. Other than that, I'll be catching you in the next video. Corrupt, signing out.